This belief that we have that things are going to be perfect in some way, shape, or form, they never will. You need to be okay with good enough to move forward, good enough for the team, good enough for you to delegate effectively to your team so that you can scale to a higher role, a more strategic role, and focus on the vision, the culture, and actually making that transition successful and leading to growth. Those are the three main pitfalls I see.
And are there things that allow somebody to put systems in place ahead of time? I mean, to where when this sort of situation emerges where they have to transition or there is a big event like a merger, what are some things that businesses can have in place that sort of make that process go smoothly or allow that transition to be more successful?
There's definitely things you can do to prepare, right? As I said before, make sure you gather the data, but don't over romanticize it. Make sure you are objective. Look at it through a third party. Get someone to look at it with you, whether that is a group of, your leadership team, advisors, someone you trust, a thinking partner, someone that would look at that information with you. Make a plan that is coherent with the vision you have for this new phase. And that doesn't apply just for mergers and acquisition. That also applies for a family succession, for example. That applies when you're about to on a new role or you're going to step into a different role and level with your own business. And you need to also make sure to remember. I love this phrase by Mike Tyson where he used to say, "Everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face." And as entrepreneurs, you eventually learn that you're going to have to face a lot of things that you didn't know that you didn't know. So it is very important that you also realize that you're going to have to adjust and you're going to have to fly that plane and fix it while it is flying. And that is why the importance of having clarity of strategy and decision making that is done on a timely manner is important because it is never going to be perfect. You're always going to have to do adjustments. But then that means that you need to have the ability to adjust as things come up, and you need to be able to do that on a timely manner. So I think at the end of the day, you can prepare, and there are definitely things to do. You need to look at the people, depending on the transition situation, of course. It's not the same if you're going to acquire a business than if you're just going through a big growth plan for the next 5, 10 years, or if you're going through a family business succession, right? So depending on the situation, I always like to look at vision, which is the strategy. What is it that you want? People, the team in place, the people that's going to support you and that is going to make this happen, and of course, everything that has to do with finance, commerce, and operation. And how are you going to make sure that during the moment that you're transitioning, that the operation continues smoothly and the business doesn't stop, but it actually grows?
Yeah, I would imagine that, especially when you're merging things or you're bringing in people who weren't part of it, that the people part can be such a huge part of leverage.
75% of why a merger fails, cultural clash. Doesn't matter if you're big or small. And funny enough, even though we have the data, for some reason, leaders still underestimate the importance of cultural fit and evaluating that leadership team and really assessing if it's the right fit, not for the business that you have right now, but for the business that will be once the company is acquired and you're trying to integrate it post acquisition.
Is that sort of in your opinion, do you look at that cultural fit? Is that something that people can fix or work on once they're already in that situation? Or is it really just a matter of doing due diligence at the beginning and finding the right sort of fit to that company that is going to be built?
I think if you have the space, which we usually do, you really need to put emphasis on the due diligence process. Of course, most companies go through due diligence like the common things: finances, operations, capex, investments required, commercial plans, et cetera, et cetera. But the people part and the culture part, there are ways for you to assess and evaluate that. And not only through data, which is of course very important, but also how the company has behaved in the past. Have they done recent layoffs? Of course, a team that has gone through that is going to behave different than a team that has been consistently growing. Have they had a lot of leadership changes before? Which means that they might, once you go in, they might think, hey, dude, how long are you going to last, until the next leader comes? Have they been going through a lot of challenges lately? Have they gone through a lot of turnover lately? How do the team makes the decisions? If you can evaluate the last couple of decisions and see how they assessed the problem, what kind of criteria they used to make the decisions, and if the decision didn't go their way, how they behaved. So, yes, there's definitely ways for you to assess cultural fit, and it's definitely something worth putting your energy, your money, and your time on, as well as you do with legal, as well as you do with finances, and as well as you do with taxes. Because at the end of the day, 75%, which means almost 8 out of 10 mergers, fell because of cultural fit. And they fell also because we tend to forget, because we are in a business environment and we're trying to scale and grow things. We forget that there are humans behind everything, and humans, as you know, are very emotional beings, trying to make rational decisions. So when you're going through a transition, whether that is a merger, whether that is a crisis, whether that is a succession in a family business, there's a lot of anxiety, there's a lot of fear and stress, as it's normal whenever human beings are going through change. And as a leader, you need to take that into consideration, because if not, whatever decision you make from a black and white perspective, from an Excel sheet perspective, will most likely fail, because you need to assess and you need to compound into your decision making the emotional and the people component of that decision that you're making.
Yeah, this is so insightful. And especially for businesses who I think are going to be approaching this sort of transition or looking at utilizing mergers and acquisitions in the coming future.